that brought up that there has been discussions about neighbor islands. And so we're Kona-Kohala Chamber, we're West Hawaii, we are dependent on tourism like the other neighbor islands. And so I do just want to urge that when these decisions and discussions are made in this committee, that we really do take into account the different areas and what's happening here. We've got businesses that, have been in our community for decades that are completely reliant on tourists for their customer base and are looking to close forever. And there is a real sense of urgency. And the problem is, here and the other neighbor islands with the low case counts, we haven't had any deaths on this island. And it's just, I can't even say enough how important it is. So what's going on in Oahu is really affecting all of us as well. And so, yes, it's really important to get a handle on it. I really like the idea about selective restrictions because I think that also speaks to geography, but also to businesses. And so it's very important, I think, to know where the cases are, where the clusters are, because they might not even be in dining restaurants. That's the thing is we've got restaurants that are finally starting to come back and to turn around and to not be able to do in dining again. If that's not even the source. So I think it's very important to have that second and third layer of data that this committee has discussed. And so those are just some things. We also have members that are really in the business community that are really disappointed that we can't fly from our islands to the other neighbor islands, because we were actually depending on some of our tourism companies were actually seeing Kama'aina tourists from other islands. And so that just got shut down. And so why can't we fly from here to Maui or here to Kauai and Kauai to here? And so I hope that gets considered in some ways, because that, again, our numbers are low. So those are some comments. And I just wanted to say I really like the direction that this communications committee is taking and the funding, the CARES Act funding committee. Excellent job, and excellent job with this, with all of you. So thank you.
Many of the things that we did wrong during the last shutdown was to not prepare effectively for the reopening, whether it was the public health, standing up the necessary contact tracing and messaging for the public health side. But we also never completed a plan for reopening tourism. And, when we go to a more restrictive model on Oahu, there's no reason why we shouldn't complete a plan for reopening tourism to the neighbor islands. I mean, and we can stand that up with whatever we're able to do in the form of testing, on the mainland, pre-flight testing to avoid a 14-day quarantine. If you can't get a test, you have to do a 14-day quarantine. It's just that simple. So if, in other words, the concern over not enough tests available, I think shouldn't stop us from considering that possibility for those direct flights to the neighbor islands. And we're not going to see, a huge number of visitors when we begin to reopen. It's really an opportune time to consider this and to finish the plan and start to make it happen on the neighbor islands that want to reopen.
To follow up, yes, we are all very concerned with safety and healthcare capacity, especially on neighbor islands. But yes, that is a point that some of our businesses are making, is why can't we have the direct flights? We have Kona International Airport. So, why can't we just have the direct flights come into here and bypass all of what's happening in Oahu? I'm not sure. Those are some of the comments and things that we are getting from some of our businesses.
Speaker Saiki, this is Mark Perriello with the Kauai Chamber. Can I say a couple of words?
Sure.
So I want to agree with what Micah and Wendy and Carl were saying about the neighbor islands. I think decoupling them from Oahu is really important. We have a very different situation going on over here. But the two main points that I'd like to make is that moving forward, and we've encouraged this with the governor in a meeting that we had with him on Friday, is that we really need benchmarks moving forward so that businesses aren't playing a guessing game about whether we're going to open or not open or stay open or close in a week or what have you. It would be good to have some sort of indicator of when decisions are going to be made, rather than groups coming together and making decisions and it not being transparent. I think that they should be transparent. It should be easy for businesses to know which direction things are going, and what have you. The second thing that I think is really important is, as much as we talk about the health and well-being of our community, we don't really talk about the health and well-being of our businesses as much, or at least it seems not as much on today's call. And I think it's really important that they're in triage too, right? A lot of our businesses are in triage. And if you're going to close down Oahu again, you better be right there with a plan about how those businesses are going to stay afloat during that time, right? Because what happens, I think, is that we close down businesses and we think we're closing everything down, but the businesses still need to pay their mortgage. They still need to pay their lease. They still need to pay insurances, right? And so what ends up happening is they have a dwindling cash flow right down to the point where they close permanently. And so it's really important, I think, for the state to step up and really come out with some solutions so that maybe they don't have to pay rent, maybe they don't have to pay their mortgage, so that when the businesses are potentially shut down again, they aren't slowly bleeding their finances away during the time that they're closed.
Yeah, Tina.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody's comments, and I agree with Wendy and everybody else. I mean, to shut down the entire state again, businesses are going to die, especially if we're not the hot spot or we're not the ones that are causing the pandemic, that number spikes that you're seeing. And we get it where healthcare is coming from, because you are concerned, about the spread and about the community. But we're looking at businesses too. And, I think a targeted shutdown, of those businesses that are, part of the problem or the areas that are the problem, I think that's what we should be looking at. I think for businesses, it was already said, most businesses are closing because they can't pay their lease rents. That's just a known fact. That is the largest single monthly expenditure that any business has. And without income, they can't pay it. A lot of these businesses are, yes, they are making some money, but they had to redo their budgets and everything. So it's a lot lower. So if they were making $100 a day pre-pandemic, they're making maybe $10. If they make $12, they're above budget and they're happy, but they're still $88 less than what they were making a year before. So the numbers aren't really there for a lot of businesses. I think businesses, from what I'm hearing, is very frustrated from the government departments, not necessarily from this committee, but the way a lot of departments are handling things. They are not transparent. They go back on their word. We always hear the na, just joking and take that. And a lot of businesses, they're becoming so frustrated now. We've had all of this time to figure out a plan to open tourism. Why haven't we figured it out yet? It's been going on since March, and I think, a lot of businesses, we're just frustrated because you're playing now with people's lives, because now one more month, that means I can't afford it. I'm closing. We have heard where people have actually are selling their homes because they can't afford it anymore. They're looking to move in with relatives. The rentals that they have, they can't afford the rent right now. And when that ends again, are they going to get evicted? They don't have money to have, another 3 months down payment or rent or whatever it is. I think we need to step up and really look at businesses. Yes, we need to also help the unemployed. But businesses right now, we are suffering a lot of it, especially if you're reliant on tourism. And it's sad. And, we're statewide. We're not just Oahu. So we care about the neighbor islands as well. And we also know what happens on Oahu is impacting the neighbor islands big time. And we have to be cautious of that as well.